The smoke coming from the burning city of Athens must have loomed eerily on the horizon to the Greeks that were now gathering their fleet around the small island of Salamis. Every single ship that the Greek coalition could muster was now converging around this small last bastion of resistance. Two lines of thinking would emerge out of this crisis. Most of the allies were of the opinion to abandon Salamis, retreat near the Isthmus of Corinth, and to make their final stand from there. What reinforced this thesis was that some of the Peloponnesians had already destroyed the road near Megara and were building a wall to block the isthmus, choosing to fight from there in case the Persians decided to invade with their land forces. A further aggravating factor towards the immediate abandonment of Salamis was the obvious sight of the burning Greek metropolis just a few miles to the north. While the Greeks deliberated, the mastermind of the Greek naval strategy, Athenian general and politician Themistocles, spoke up in favor of standing their ground. He argued that if the coalition navy dispersed from their current positions, then there would be nothing holding them together, as everyone would try to defend their own city. Turning to the Spartan leader of the coalition, a man named Epaphroditus, Themistocles exclaimed, "The choice lies in your hands to save Hellas. If you listen to me and stay here, you will not imperil the fleet by fighting in open waters near the isthmus, where we will be at a heavy disadvantage since our ships are fewer and heavier. Even if we avoid defeat right now, the Persians could easily capture Megara, Salamis and Aegina, which they could then use as launching points against the Peloponnese itself if we do not control the sea. Moreover, all of our women and children are now stationed on Salamis. By making our stand here, you'll be better off defending the Peloponnese instead of fighting the Persians near the isthmus." Thus spoke Themistocles, but a few of the attendants attacked back by describing him as a man without a city, who had no right to take part in their council of war. Irked by this, Themistocles once again turned to Epaphroditus, warning him about the volatile nature of the alliance. "The fate of Hellas lies in your hands. If you stay here, our only strength, which is our ships, will be used to their utmost effectiveness," he exclaimed. He then warned Epaphroditus that if he abandons the Athenians, then they would be left with no choice but to abandon the alliance themselves, taking with them half of the Greek fleet and leaving for an Athenian colony in Italy. He closed his speech with the final words, "And you, left without allies such as we are, will have cause to remember what I have said." These closing words seem to have convinced the Spartan general in favor of staying and facing the Persian fleet within the Straits of Salamis, but the atmosphere in the Greek War Council remained explosive. Rumors of the work around the isthmus and the wall that was being built there had spread to the Peloponnesian men of the fleet, many of whom wanted to abandon their positions and defend the Peloponnese. This smoldering resentment soon broke out, and yet another council was held. At this key moment of deliberation and turmoil, Themistocles feared that he would be outvoted. Thinking quickly, he decided to take drastic measures. He discreetly abandoned the war council, and under the cover of darkness dispatched a ship containing one of his children's tutors, with orders to deliver a message to the Persian camp. After a dramatic night's sail, the passenger reached the Persian side and informed Xerxes that the Greek alliance was on the verge of disintegration. He then urged the Persian king to take action and surround the Greek positions before the fleet could escape. The message was of course false intelligence. The real intention of the cunning Athenian general was to force the hand of the Greek allies by provoking the Persians to trap them within the Straits of Salamis. The subterfuge was successful because as soon as Xerxes heard this, he immediately ordered his fleet to surround the Greeks. We can assume that a night maneuver like this would have been very difficult, so it is no wonder that the flanking force was headed by the Phoenicians, who were experienced in naval affairs. While the Persian fleet was completing the midnight encirclement, a detachment of infantrymen was disembarking on the islet of Salamis. Due to its position at the middle of the straits, it was believed that once battle commenced, men from the shipwrecks were likely to drift in this direction, thus offering the Persians a chance to save any of their own men whilst killing any enemies that also happened to float by. Meanwhile, back at the Greek camp, things remain heated between the generals. Not being able to decide upon a course of action, and oblivious to the fact that they were being enveloped by the enemy, the Greeks were engaged in their favourite pastime: quarrelling. What eventually broke the stalemate was yet another dramatic midnight sailing venture. An exiled Athenian politician, known as Aristides the Just, made a risky night crossing from Aegina to Salamis, and managed to pass through the Persian blockade undetected. He then approached the war council with news of the enemy's movements. Soon after Aristides' arrival, a ship of Ionians who defected from the Persian fleet also approached the war council and reaffirmed Aristides' intelligence. With dawn fast approaching, the only option left for the Greeks was fighting then and there. The stage was now set. Despite the Persian numerical superiority, a significant portion of the ships was kept outside the straits to guard the sea corridors between the island of Salamis, and as such would not directly participate in the upcoming battle. Themistocles' decision to fight in the straits was tactically sound. There was barely enough space for the Persian armada to fit inside the narrow corridor between Salamis and the Greek mainland, let alone maneuver, so everything would be resolved by close quarters fighting. As the first rays of dawn broke across the horizon, tinging the trireme rams and men's armor, the Persian king sitting upon his vantage point was perplexed. He thought that the Greek alliance was on the verge of breaking, and instead he saw the whole Hellenic fleet perfectly arrayed for battle. Pretty much all of the ancient sources agree that the Greek fleet numbered around 370 ships, most of which being triremes, whilst the Persian fleet outnumbered them heavily with a force of 1,200 ships. We also have a rough picture of the formations for each fleet. The Greeks were probably arrayed into two ranks, since the straits were too narrow for a single line of ships. The Athenians were on the left wing, and on the honorary right wing were the Spartans as the leaders of the coalition, even though the most numerous contingent of ships was by far the Athenians. The rest of the Greek allies were positioned in the centre of the formation, whilst the Persian fleet seems to have been formed into three ranks, with the most capable and experienced in naval warfare, the Phoenicians on the right flank opposite the Athenians, with the Ionian Greeks, who were now fighting for the Persians, were positioned on its left flank, and the rest of the contingents at its centre. Just before the battle commenced, Themistocles gave a speech, contrasting all that is fine with all that is bad in man's nature and condition. He urged his men to grasp what is fine, and ordered them to prepare for the upcoming clash. As soon as the Phoenicians saw the opposite Athenian line of triremes, they immediately began rowing towards them. For a brief moment, the Greek battle line stood still, but then an Athenian trireme charged and rammed an enemy ship. The two vessels became entangled, and a fierce boarding struggle ensued. Seeing their comrades engaged, many of the other Greeks came to the entangled ship's aid, and just like that, the Battle of Salamis began. The exact course of events afterwards is not well described by ancient sources. The only man who had a panoramic view of the battle was Xerxes, sitting upon a hill near Mount Aigaleo. Around 1,000 ships were fighting it out within the narrow straits. And as soon as the individual trireme commanders were engaged, central command and control bare little meaning. It was crew against crew, and ship against ship. A chaotic carnage ensued, with thousands of men engaged in vicious boarding actions. Slowly but steadily, the heavily armoured Greek hoplites began to dominate the more lightly armoured Persians. The Greek triremes proved to be far more effective in close quarters naval combat than that of their Persian counterparts. The Greek left wing, occupied by the Athenian contingent, was able to push back the first line of Persian ships, and as a result, they became trapped within their own second and third lines. This gigantic mess of Persian vessels that was now being pushed eastwards by the Athenians and Corinthians was decisively attacked by the centre and left wing of the Greek fleet that up until that point was fighting defensively. Unlike land battles, there could be no massive cascade of panic, because fighting was a conglomeration of individual ship duels, and in an era before telecommunications, nobody could effectively give a general order of retreat. Instead, the Battle of Salamis devolved into a disorganized and messy ordeal. The straits were soon littered with hundreds of capsizing or sinking ships, and thousands of struggling or drowning men. But the Persians were suffering many more casualties, as most of them were unable to swim. The squeezed-in mass of Persian ships that were not sinking or burning was slowly being pushed to the east and outside the Straits of Salamis. It was a long drawn-out affair that lasted pretty much the entire day. Eventually in the afternoon the straits were cleared, with the remaining Persian ships limping back to shelter at the harbour of Phalerum. During the tumultuous retreat of the Persian navy, nobody thought of the detachment of men that was left stranded upon Citylea. The abandoned squadron of Persians left on the islet of Citylea had nowhere to run. The Athenian general Aristides, known to history as the Just, took a detachment of men across to Citylea and carried out a mop-up operation, destroying every last single one of the unfortunate trapped soldiers. It was the closing chapter to one of the most decisive naval engagements in history. Casualties for the Greeks were few, and we can assume that they could easily have replenished any of the lost triremes with the ones they captured. Reportedly, they only lost 40 ships. Whilst on the other hand, the Persians suffered massive casualties, and around a third of their navy was either captured or lost. Themistocles' wooden walls had triumphed against all odds. The Battle of Salamis marked the high tide of the second Persian invasion of Greece. King Xerxes had now lost control of the sea, stranded in a rocky, hostile land with few provisions, and facing a logistical nightmare without his navy. He would either have to face the Greek hoplites in a land battle, or retreat all the way back the way he came. It was a matter that would be resolved a year later, at the Battle of Plataea. Thank you for watching our video on the Battle of Salamis. If you have made it this far, please consider subscribing, sharing, commenting, and all the other good stuff that tricks the YouTube gods into sharing our video with as many people as possible. A big thank you to Ockis Balaam for giving me the opportunity to narrate this presentation. If you would like to hear more of my slightly sinister vocal tones, you can do so by visiting The Faceless Narrator here on YouTube, where we focus on the unusual and often more macabre characters from ancient history. Until next time, Chiri and Isha Haraj.